My name is Clara, I'm 24 years old, and my family tried to arrange my marriage to save my father's failing business. Before I tell you about how a single wedding photo brought all their lives crashing down, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. My phone won't stop buzzing. It's been vibrating against the cheap laminate of this motel nightstand for the last hour, a relentless, angry buzz that seems to shake the whole room. Each vibration is a new message, a new missed call. My mother. My father. My aunt. A cousin I haven't spoken to in 3 years. They're a chorus of digital rage, and I'm ignoring every single one of them. Next to me on the lumpy bed, my new husband, Liam, is asleep. His breathing is the only calm sound in this room that smells of stale cigarettes and pine-scented cleaner. In my hand, my phone feels heavy, like a weapon. On the screen is a single photo, ready to send. It's blurry, taken on a friend's cracked phone camera. We're standing outside the county courthouse, me in a $30 white dress from Amazon, him in the one good button-down shirt he owns. We're not looking at the camera, we're looking at each other, laughing, because I'd almost dropped the $12 ring he just put on my finger. The photo is messy, imperfect, and honest. It's everything my family hates. And it's the only reply they're ever going to get. Just 2 weeks ago, none of this seemed possible. Life was simple. Predictable. It was a Sunday, just like any other. The house smelled of Mom's pot roast, the kind she could stretch to last a whole week. Dad was in his recliner, the low rumble of a football game filling the living room. My younger sister, Jenna, was curled up on the couch, lost in the bright glow of her phone. I was helping Mom with the salad, the familiar rhythm of our routine as comforting as a warm blanket. Then I saw it. 2 extra place settings at the dining table. The good plates, too. Who else is coming? I asked, keeping my voice light. Mom didn't look up from the gravy she was stirring. Oh, Frank and Kyle are joining us, she said, her smile a little too bright. Just a nice family dinner. A cold knot formed in my stomach. Frank Thompson was Dad's best friend since high school. They'd built their small construction businesses side by side. I barely knew his son, Kyle, except that he was a few years older and worked with his dad. He was quiet, awkward, and seemed about as interested in me as I was in him. Which was not at all. When they arrived, the evening turned strange. Frank was loud and overly cheerful. Kyle just stared at his shoes. Mom kept piling the best pieces of pot roast onto Kyle's plate, giving me these weird, meaningful looks from across the table. Under the table, Jenna kept kicking my foot, her eyes wide as if trying to send me a secret message. I felt like an actor in a play where everyone else had the script but me. Then, between the pot roast and the boxed brownies Mom was serving for dessert, Dad cleared his throat. The football game had been muted. The whole room went silent. Clara, he started, his voice heavy with importance. Frank and I have been talking. A lot. Frank beamed like he'd just won the lottery. Kyle here is ready to settle down, you know. Thinking about the future. I could feel every muscle in my body tense up. I knew, with a sickening certainty, where this was going. My dad continued, not even looking at me, but at Frank. It makes perfect sense. We're looking to merge the businesses. Kyle is set to take over his father's share eventually. He has a real future, a great salary, and he's on track for a major promotion. You two would make a good match. A strong union. A strong union. Like we were kingdoms, not people. I stared at him, the brownie in my mouth turning to sawdust. My fork was frozen halfway to my lips. I looked over at Kyle. He was staring at his plate so hard I thought he might burn a hole through it. My mom's voice cut through the silence, syrupy sweet. Honey, we're talking about your future. About securing it. I finally found my voice. It came out quiet, but steady. I'm dating Liam. Mom waved her hand dismissively, like she was shooing away a fly. "Oh, sweetie," she said, her tone dripping with pity. "That's just a young girl's fancy. We're talking about real life now. A life of stability." "Your mother's right," Dad added, his voice hardening. "Liam's a nice enough kid, but he's not going anywhere. This is about family. This is about what's best for everyone." This wasn't a discussion. It was a verdict. They had decided my life for me. The anger that had been simmering in my stomach began to boil. It was a hot flash that crawled up my neck, making my skin prickle. I put my fork down with a soft clink that sounded like a gunshot in the silent room. My chair scraped loudly against the hardwood floor as I stood up. Every eye in the room snapped to me. My mom's fake smile faltered. My dad's face began to turn that familiar shade of deep red. Frank looked startled. I opened my mouth, the words I was about to say burning on my tongue, ready to scorch every bridge I had ever built with these people. I didn't say another word. I just turned and walked out of the dining room, out the front door, and into the cool night air. I didn't have my purse, I didn't have my keys, but I had my phone. The first person I called was Liam. He was there in 10 minutes. I got into his beat-up Honda Civic, the engine rumbling like an old bear, and just said, "Drive." The next day, I went back to the house while my parents were at work. Jenna was there, her eyes full of worry. She didn't say much, just helped me shove clothes, toiletries, and a few sentimental things into a duffel bag and 2 trash bags. It was a sad, pathetic collection of a 24-year-old life. As I was leaving, she pressed a $100 bill into my hand. "Just in case," she whispered. I hugged her tight, a lump forming in my throat. She was the only ally I had left in that house. Liam's apartment wasn't much, a studio the size of my parents' living room, but it was ours. We made it work. I put my skincare routine on the bathroom sink, my clothes in a corner that became my closet. We ate cheap pasta sitting on the floor, using a cardboard box as a table. And for a few days, it felt like an adventure. It was us against the world. We were defiant, in love, and free. We'd lie awake at night, talking about our future, about the small 2-bedroom apartment we were saving up for. It felt real. It felt possible. That feeling lasted until Thursday. Payday. My part-time job at the local bookstore wasn't much, but I was good at it, and I'd been saving diligently. I had a little over $2,000 in my savings account. It was our emergency fund, our first and last month's rent fund. After work, Liam and I went to the grocery store to do a real shopping trip, to fill the fridge with more than just ketchup packets and a half-empty jar of pickles. We filled the cart. Real food. Chicken, vegetables, milk, eggs. It felt like a victory. At the checkout, the total came to $87.42. A fortune to us, but a necessary one. I swiped my debit card, feeling a surge of pride. I was an adult, providing for our new home. The cashier, a teenager with tired eyes, slid my card back across the scanner. "I'm sorry, it's declined." I felt a hot flush of shame crawl up my neck. The people in line behind me shifted their weight, a symphony of impatient sighs. "Oh," I mumbled, my heart starting to pound. "That's weird. Can you try it again?" She did. And again, the cold, digital finality declined. My hands started to tremble. This was impossible. I knew I had the money. I pulled out my phone, my fingers fumbling as I logged into my banking app. The screen loaded, and the air left my lungs in a single, silent gasp. My checking account balance, $12.50. My savings account balance, $0. It was gone. All of it. I frantically scrolled through the transaction history, and there it was. A single transfer, made that morning. The entire balance of my savings account had been moved to another account. An account I recognized. It was the joint savings account I shared with my mother, the one she'd set up for my college fund when I was a kid. An account I hadn't touched in years, but one she still had access to. She had just taken it. Without a word, without a warning. It wasn't a negotiation. It was a punishment. A deliberate, cruel act to leave me with nothing. Standing there in the harsh fluorescent lights of the grocery store, with a cart full of food we couldn't afford and the eyes of strangers on my back, I finally understood. This wasn't a disagreement. It wasn't a family argument that would eventually blow over. This was a war. And my own mother had just fired the first shot, aimed directly at my heart. We had to abandon the cart, walking out of the store with nothing but a gallon of milk and a loaf of bread that Liam paid for with the crumpled cash in his wallet. That night, we ate toast for dinner, the silence in our tiny apartment heavier than any words could ever be. The next week was a slow-motion nightmare. The loss of my savings was a physical weight, a constant knot of anxiety in my stomach. Every dollar mattered. I started selling clothes on Poshmark. Liam picked up extra shifts delivering food, driving late into the night until his old Honda was running on fumes. We were surviving, just barely, on a diet of rice, beans, and sheer stubbornness. But I was about to learn that my mother's cruelty was just the opening act. The main event was yet to come, orchestrated by the man who started it all, Frank Thompson. Liam loved his job. He was a junior project manager at a small engineering firm. He was smart, hardworking, and on the fast track. He'd been working for months on a proposal for a new city contract, and his boss had all but promised him that if they won it, a major promotion and a significant salary increase would be his. That promotion was our ticket out. It was our hope. On Wednesday, he came home from work, and I knew something was wrong the moment he walked through the door. His face was pale, his shoulders slumped. He dropped his keys on the counter and just stood there, staring at the wall. "They gave the project to someone else," he said, his voice hollow. "The promotion, too." "What? Why?" I asked, my blood running cold. "I thought it was yours. You worked so hard." He finally looked at me, and his eyes were full of a pain that cut me deeper than my mother's theft. "My boss, Mr. Henderson, called me in this afternoon. He said he'd gotten a concerning phone call. From a family friend of yours. A Mr. Frank Thompson." It felt like a punch to the gut. Frank. Of course. He told Henderson that I was an unstable influence, Liam continued, his voice barely a whisper. That I was manipulating you, that I had a history of making reckless decisions, and that promoting me would be a huge liability for the company. He said I was dragging his best friend's daughter into a life of poverty and ruining her future. They weren't just trying to control me anymore. They were actively trying to destroy the man I loved. They were trying to break us by breaking him. It was a calculated, vicious attack on his character, his career, and his future. All because he loved me and I loved him. The guilt was suffocating. This was my fault. He was paying the price for my family's war. It all came to a head that Saturday, at the one place you can't avoid in a small Ohio town, the Kroger supermarket. We were in the cereal aisle, trying to decide if we could afford the name brand Cheerios or if we had to stick with the toasted O's in the giant bag, when I heard her voice. "Clara. I thought that was you." I turned, and there they were. My mother and my father, standing at the end of the aisle like two vengeful ghosts. My mother's face was a mask of disappointment. My father's was stone. "What are you doing here?" I asked, my voice trembling. "We're grocery shopping," my mother said, gesturing to her own full cart. "Unlike some people, we can still afford to." Her eyes flickered down to our nearly empty cart, which held a bag of rice, a can of beans, and the generic cereal. The shame was so intense, I thought I might be sick. "This has to stop," my dad said, his voice a low growl that carried down the aisle. People were starting to stare. You are embarrassing this family. You are throwing your life away for him. He glared at Liam, who stood silently beside me, his jaw tight. The only ones embarrassing this family are you, I shot back, my voice rising. You tried to sell me like a piece of property. My mother gasped, clutching her pearls as if I'd physically struck her. We were trying to give you a future. A life. Look at you now. You look thin. Are you even eating? Frank was right, this boy is ruining you. That was it. Hearing them praise the man who had just sabotaged Liam's career, hearing them throw our poverty in our faces in the middle of the cereal aisle, something inside me snapped. But before I could say anything else, Liam put a hand on my arm. Let's go, Clara, he said quietly. His voice was calm, but I could feel his hand shaking. It's not worth it. He was right. We turned and walked away, leaving our cart behind. I could feel their eyes burning into my back. I could hear my mother mutter to my father, I can't believe this. What will people say? We walked out of the store, into the blinding afternoon sun, and the weight of it all finally crashed down on me. They had taken my money. They had attacked my boyfriend's livelihood. And now, they had humiliated us in public. We were cornered, broke, and utterly defeated. If you're still listening, please help me by liking this video and commenting the number 1 below, so I know you gave me a like, and I understand that you're with me on this journey. Your support is a huge encouragement for me. Please, comment with the number 1, and then listen as I continue my story. That night was the lowest point. The humiliation from the Kroger was a raw, open wound. We sat in the dark of Liam's tiny apartment, the silence thick with everything we couldn't bring ourselves to say. We had no money, no clear future, and a family that was actively trying to ruin us. It felt like they were winning. It felt hopeless. For dinner, we pulled the last of our change and bought a box of macaroni and cheese from the corner store. Liam cooked it on his ancient stove, and we sat on the floor, sharing the single bowl between us. The air was heavy with despair. I kept replaying the scene in the grocery store over and over in my head, my mother's sneer, my father's disgust, the pitying looks from strangers. The guilt was eating me alive. I'm so sorry, Liam, I whispered, tears finally starting to fall. This is all my fault. If you had never met me, your promotion would be secure, you wouldn't be in this mess. He put the fork down and took my hands. His were warm and steady. Hey! Don't you dare say that, he said, his voice firm but gentle. This is not your fault. It's theirs. The only thing you're guilty of is loving me. And if that's a crime, then I'm guilty, too. He looked around the cramped apartment, at the trash bags of my clothes in the corner, at the single pot in the sink. He looked back at me, his eyes searching mine in the dim light. They're trying to control you by controlling your life, he said slowly, the idea forming as he spoke. They want to dictate who you marry, where you live, what your future looks like. They think they can break us apart by making our life impossible. It's working, I choked out. No, it's not, he insisted. We're still here. We're still together. They can take your money, they can lie to my boss, but they can't take this. He squeezed my hands. They want to plan your wedding? They want to announce your engagement? Fine. Let's beat them to it. I looked at him, confused. What are you talking about? A slow smile spread across his face. Let's get married, Clara. Not next year, not when we have money. Right now. Let's go to the courthouse tomorrow. Let's do the one thing they have no control over. Let's choose each other, for real, and start our own family. No parents, no business deals. Just us. It was the craziest, most reckless, most wonderful idea I had ever heard. To get married not because we had to, but because we wanted to. To take back control of our own story. The tears were still on my face, but now I was smiling, too. A huge, watery, hopeful smile. "Okay," I said. "Yeah. Okay. Let's do it." The next morning, everything that could go wrong did. The zipper on my $30 white dress from Amazon got stuck. Liam's car, our only mode of transportation, made a noise like a dying animal and then refused to start. We had to call an Uber, splitting the fare 3 ways with Liam's best friend, Mike, who had agreed to be our witness. The driver kept asking why we were so dressed up on a Tuesday morning. We just told him we had a court appointment. Which was, technically, true. The ceremony itself took maybe 10 minutes. The clerk at the courthouse was eating a tuna sandwich while she processed our paperwork, the smell filling the small, beige office. There was a guy in the corner frantically filling out jury duty forms. It was the least romantic setting imaginable. But when Liam took my hand and slid the simple, $12 silver band onto my finger, none of it mattered. I looked at him, and he looked at me, and we just couldn't stop grinning like idiots. Mike took pictures on his phone. Most of them were blurry, but he got one good one, right after the clerk pronounced us husband and wife. In the photo, we're just looking at each other, our faces full of pure, unadulterated joy. A joy that no amount of money could buy and no amount of family pressure could ever take away. We celebrated at the diner around the corner, splitting a plate of fries and a milkshake, all our remaining wedding budget could afford. It wasn't the wedding my mother had dreamed of for me, but it was perfect. It was ours. We spent our wedding night in the cheapest motel we could find on the outskirts of town. The room smelled of old smoke and regret, the wallpaper was peeling, and the Wi-Fi was non-existent. It was, without a doubt, a dump. But it was our dump. We were Mr. and Mrs. Liam Anderson, a fact that felt both thrilling and terrifying. Lying there on the scratchy bedspread, the buzz of the motel's neon sign glowing through the thin curtains, we knew we couldn't hide forever. It was time to tell them. Not by phone call, not by text message. We weren't going to give them the satisfaction of hearing us plead our case or endure their screaming. We were going to do it on our own terms. I opened Instagram. My hands were shaking a little as I selected that one good, blurry photo Mike had taken. The one where we were just looking at each other, lost in our own little world of happiness. I didn't write a long paragraph. I didn't try to explain or justify anything. I just wrote a simple, 5-word caption. So, we did a thing. And then I hit post. For a few minutes, there was silence. Then, my phone lit up. And it didn't stop. The first response was from my cousin Chloe, a string of shocked face emojis. Then, a call from Jenna. I answered it, my heart pounding. "Oh my God, Clara, is this real?" she half yelled, half laughed into the phone. "Mom is going to lose her mind." She was happy for us, truly, but terrified of the fallout. She was right to be. My mother saw the post while she was at the grocery store, the same Kroger, ironically. I know this because she called me from the parking lot. I didn't answer, so she left a voicemail. It wasn't a message, it was a performance. It was a 3-minute-long sob opera, punctuated by gasps for air and the sound of shopping carts rattling in the background. "How could you do this to me?" she wailed, her voice cracking with theatrical despair. "To this family? After everything we've done for you? I can never show my face at church again. You've shamed us, Clara, you've shamed us all. And what about the deposit for the venue? We're going to lose all that money." My dad's reaction was more succinct. According to a frantic text from Jenna, he saw the post, turned a shade of purple she'd never seen before, and threw his phone across the room, where it shattered against the fireplace. Frank Thompson was at their house within the hour, no doubt to strategize their next move in a war they had just definitively lost. The extended family response was a tidal wave of digital drama. Angry Facebook messages from aunts I barely knew. Passive-aggressive comments under the photo. An uncle unfriended me. My cousin tagged me in a TikTok video about ungrateful children. It was a masterclass in petty, familial warfare. But then, amidst the chaos, a notification popped up that made me sit up straight. A direct message. From Kyle. My finger hovered over the screen. What could he possibly want? To yell at me? To gloat? I braced myself and opened it. The message was short, and it was the last thing I ever expected. It just said, "Congrats. Seriously. You have no idea how much you just helped me." I stared at the message, completely bewildered. Helped him? How? Liam read it over my shoulder, just as confused as I was. Before I could even begin to process it, another message from Kyle came through. My dad is going ballistic over here. But don't worry about him. He's about to have much bigger problems than your wedding. You guys just saved me from having to tell him about my girlfriend. And her 3-year-old son. My jaw dropped. A girlfriend? A kid? This whole time, Kyle had been in a secret relationship, just like us. This arranged marriage wasn't just a trap for me, it was a trap for him, too. And by getting married, I hadn't just saved myself. I had, completely by accident, set him free. The whole situation was suddenly a lot more complicated than I thought. The message from Kyle was a crack in the foundation of the story my parents had built. Suddenly, this wasn't just about me being a rebellious daughter. There were other secrets, other lives being hidden. But I had no idea that the crack was about to become a chasm, and my little sister, Jenna, was the one holding the sledgehammer. A few days later, while Liam and I were still laying low in the motel, trying to figure out our next move, I got a string of texts from Jenna. It wasn't her usual mix of gossip and worried emojis. It was just a series of pictures, sent without any explanation. The first photo was of a loan agreement from a commercial bank, the logo stark at the top. The second was a close-up of the signature lines, Frank Thompson, and right below it, as guarantor, my father's familiar, looping script. The next picture made my blood run cold. It was a letter stamped in huge, red letters, final notice of default. The date on it was from 3 weeks ago, just before that disastrous Sunday dinner. What is this? I texted back, my hands shaking. Jenna's reply came instantly. Found it in Dad's office. He's been so stressed lately, locking himself in there for hours. I got worried. There's more. The next photos were even worse. A second mortgage document on Frank Thompson's house, also co-signed by my father. A thick stack of unpaid invoices from suppliers. And then, the final, devastating piece of the puzzle. It was a printout of an email chain between my father, Frank, and a large development corporation. They were in negotiations to sell both of their businesses, Thompson Construction and my dad's company, as a single package deal. The offer was huge. Enough to pay off all their debts and leave them with a comfortable retirement. But there was a catch. I scanned the text until my eyes landed on the key phrase, highlighted in yellow on the printout. The buyers wanted proof of stable, long-term succession planning. They weren't just buying 2 businesses, they were buying a legacy. They needed to know the companies would remain a stable, family-run entity for years to come. And just like that, everything clicked into place. The sickening, horrible, undeniable truth. It was never about tradition. It was never about what was best for me. It was a business transaction. Frank's company was sinking, and he was dragging my father down with him. This sale was their only lifeboat. And Kyle and I? We weren't a potential couple. We were an asset. Our marriage was the proof of stable succession they needed to close the deal and save themselves from financial ruin. They were going to sell my life to save their company. They were willing to sacrifice my happiness, my future, and my love for Liam, all for a signature on a contract. The anger I felt was nothing like the hot flash of rage at the dinner table. This was a cold, quiet, deep fury. It was the anger of realizing that to the people who were supposed to love you most, you were nothing more than a bargaining chip. I showed the photos to Liam. He was silent for a long time, just swiping through them one by one. He didn't say, "I told you so." He didn't say anything about his lost promotion or my stolen savings. He just wrapped his arms around me and held me tight. "So what do we do now?" he asked quietly. I looked at the photos on my phone screen, the black and white proof of their betrayal. I thought about my mother's crocodile tears in the Kroger parking lot. I thought about my father's stony silence. I thought about Frank Thompson destroying Liam's career to protect his own lies. They had waged a war on us, thinking we were powerless. They had no idea that my quiet little sister had just handed me all the ammunition I would ever need. The truth. And I was ready to use it. I didn't confront them directly. A screaming match would have given them the satisfaction of turning this into another family drama. I wanted this to be cold, quiet, and undeniable. I sent the pictures to one person, my mother. No text, no explanation. Just the photos of the loan defaults and the merger agreement. Then I turned off my phone. The first domino to fall was Frank Thompson. His wife, a woman I'd always known as quiet and meek, was apparently not so meek when she found out her husband had secretly mortgaged their home twice and gambled away their future. Jenna told me the shouting match could be heard all the way down the street. A week later, there was a moving truck outside their house. She filed for divorce, and her lawyer made it clear she was going after everything Frank had left, which, as it turned out, was not much. The big development deal, of course, had vanished the moment word of the family implosion got out. Frank's business officially filed for bankruptcy a month later. He was last seen living in his brother's spare bedroom. My parents' punishment was quieter, but in some ways, more profound. Their best friends were gone. Their reputation in our small town was tarnished. And their business, while not bankrupt, was forced to downsize significantly. They had to sell off equipment and move to a smaller office. They avoided financial ruin, but they were humbled. The grand future they had been so desperate to secure had crumbled to dust, all because of their own greed and deceit. My mother tried to call, to text, to send long, rambling emails full of justifications and blame. I didn't respond. I needed space. I needed silence. I needed to build a life so far removed from their web of lies that they couldn't touch me anymore. Liam and I finally got our own place. It wasn't the two-bedroom we'd dreamed of. It was a cramped one-bedroom on the ground floor of a noisy building, with a weird layout and no dishwasher. But it was ours. We filled it with second-hand furniture from Facebook Marketplace and a sense of peace that was worth more than any inheritance. I got my job back at the bookstore, and Liam, free from the toxic environment at his old firm, found a new position where his hard work was actually valued. We were still broke, but we were happy. The healing with my family began in the most unexpected way. Our ancient Honda Civic finally died for good in the parking lot of our apartment building. Liam had the hood up, covered in grease, trying to figure out what was wrong, when a familiar pickup truck pulled up. My dad. He got out of the truck, not saying a word. He didn't apologize. He didn't try to explain. He just looked at the engine, grunted, and said, "Hand me that wrench." For 2 hours, they worked on the car together in near silence. Two men who had every reason to hate each other, connected by a shared language of oil filters and spark plugs. Jenna told me later that Mom had mentioned the car had died, and Dad had just gotten in his truck and left. It was his way of surrendering. An apology made of grease and steel instead of words he could never bring himself to say. He couldn't fix the car, it was beyond repair, but he fixed something else that day. A small, broken piece of our family. A few days later, he sent Liam a link to a used car for sale, a reliable Toyota. No message, just the link. It was a start. A fragile, quiet truce in a war that nobody had truly won. We bought the Toyota the following week, using a small loan that, for the first time, had only our names on it. Months melted into a new kind of normal. Our life was a collection of small, quiet victories. We bought a Real bed frame. We found a lumpy, stained couch that was surprisingly comfortable. The upstairs neighbor's kids switched from practicing the trumpet to the drums, which we decided was a lateral move. It was our life, and we were building it, piece by piece. Then came the invitation. A hesitant phone call from my mother, asking if we would come for Thanksgiving dinner. I wanted to say no. I wanted to protect the fragile peace we had built. But Liam, ever the pragmatist, pointed out that free turkey was free turkey. So, we went. Walking back into that house was surreal. It looked the same, smelled the same, but everything was different. The air was thick with unspoken apologies and awkward silences. My Aunt Alice made a few pointed comments about unconventional life choices. My Uncle Bob just pretended we didn't exist. But Jenna and my cousin Chloe were brilliant, running interference like professional bodyguards, steering conversations away from dangerous territory. The biggest surprise was seeing Frank Thompson's ex-wife there. She and my mom had remained friends. She brought a sweet potato casserole and spent most of dinner talking cheerfully about her new pottery class and her journey of self-discovery. My dad just stared into his mashed potatoes, looking like he wanted the floor to swallow him whole. But the most telling moment came when I was helping my mom clear the plates. I glanced over at the fireplace mantel, a shrine to our family's history. And there, tucked between a horrible school picture of me from 7th grade and my parents' own wedding photo, was a new addition. It was a small, silver frame. Inside was the blurry picture Mike had taken on his phone, of me and Liam outside the courthouse, laughing. My mom saw me looking at it. She came and stood beside me, drying a plate. She didn't say anything for a long moment. Then, she caught my eye, and a small, tired smile touched her lips. And she winked. It wasn't a solution. It wasn't an absolution. But it was an acknowledgement. A silent truce. A recognition that the life I had chosen was now a part of the family's story, whether they had planned it that way or not. Our apartment is still small. The $12 ring from that chaotic Tuesday finally did turn my finger a little green, but I refused to take it off. It's a reminder. Liam is taking some online courses, working toward a better future for us. Sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night, and the panic from those first few weeks comes rushing back, the feeling of being broke, cornered, and alone. But then I feel Liam's steady breathing beside me, and I look around our little home, filled with our mismatched furniture and our quiet life, and I know that I'm not that person anymore. I chose love over business. I chose my own messy, complicated, beautiful future over the sterile, pre-approved one they tried to force on me. It wasn't easy, and the scars are still there. But they're mine. And for the first time in my life, I feel completely and utterly free. Thank you so much for listening to my story all the way through. It means the world to me to be able to share it. If any part of this resonated with you, what's one piece of advice you would give to someone facing a difficult family situation? I'd love to read your thoughts in the comments below. And if you'd like to hear more stories, please don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Thank you again.